And now, live from Sharp Facets Gallery, it's time for the I Love Ann Show.
Oh, that's right. We are right here. It is the I Love Ann Show, hour number 2. Peggy is off today, but I have Martin Klingst, right? That's like almost like Colonel Klink. I see nothing. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very good. Now, you came here to Greenwood. Why did you come here to Greenwood, South Carolina?
Well, I came here. Well, it's not the first time I'm in this region, so I've traveled with the campaigns. I've been to Greenville and to Columbia and to Charleston. But I came here to learn about how people make their ends meet, how they're doing in economic dire times, and to see how the middle class is doing. I am focusing on a series of articles about how communities are weathering the economic downturn, and I'm looking at the diversity of communities and how they tackle the problems. And I've come across a New York Times article that pointed out that there are some trouble here, and then I called the mayor, and he said, come down, it's a bit different. So I came down and see it's a bit different.
Yeah, I think that would have been an article like out of the past, wouldn't it? With all the concentration on the mills, we've kind of made that change.
Yes, I think that is over. You know, that was the 80s and maybe the 90s, and I've looked at the mills, I've talked to former mill workers, but I went to the Southside Cafe that was pictured in this article, but that is yesterday, or even before yesterday. And I think that's over. The recent economic crisis is the crisis that all communities in the United States face. It's not, bound to the mills.
Right, exactly. In fact, I mean, they are working hard to get other industries in here. If this is your first time, I mean, since Christmas, we've ended up with a Hobby Lobby, some retail stores, and Michael's, and things like that. And we've just got an announcement that's pending, because where there's smoke, there's fire here in Greenwood. It's all a secret, but we seem to know that it is Kohl's, one of the big retail chains. Women's clothing is coming here, and some other stores are coming. So
these are encouraging signs.
Yes, they absolutely are. So as you see that things are not doing as well around the country. But what is your opinion? You've been here since Monday, correct?
Yes.
What are you seeing in Greenwood compared to some of the other places that you've been working on?
Well, what I see is, that people, especially of the middle class, are struggling, that the median income has decreased, and that some people have to take a second or third job to make sure their ends meet. And that is very interesting to see, and I've come here to see how they also look at government, why some of them receive government aid, even federal aid. And, there's a huge political debate going on. It probably is at the core of the political dispute at the moment, the role of government, what should government do, what is duty, what is government's obligation, or should government stay out of the way, like Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution, it's the problem. So to find this out, how people think about the role of government in dire times, is very interesting for me as a German with a totally different kind of system.
And what kind of system do you have over there? What makes it totally different?
Well, it makes it, people think there is a government duty, and even though no one likes to pay taxes, we pay higher taxes, and people, I think, are quite comfortable with that if government, just provides them with some basic services. Mm-hmm. Good schools, a good infrastructure system, healthcare system. We have a mandatory system, a healthcare system, which is a lot more efficient than the one you see here. It's also more cost efficient. And so I think, I'm not advocating it, but I think, there are things that can learn from one another. And so Germany went through major economic and welfare reforms in the past decade. Right. And it's interesting to know that it was actually a more left-leaning government that did the major changes. It was a social democratic green coalition between two parties, and that made a lot of changes, also had hard fights with the unions over it, but they went through it and carried it out. And I think today we're benefiting from that, and German unemployment is almost down to 5%, which is a record low for a long time. So I would say that we as Germans still think that there must be a basic safety net for everyone. You know, if you get unemployed, health care, public education should be free, high school education. We have a totally different also education system. And we also have a different training system. I think that our workers, you know, they get a different skill. And I've been up to Wisconsin a month ago, and went to a very interesting company that produces industrial knives. And they were looking for a joint venture with a German company. And they asked me, you know, how do you train your people? Because we just had a bunch of young German workers over here, you know, to look at our firm, and we had a huge problem with one of our machines, and no one here could fix it. They just sat there all night long, and the next morning they had it fixed. So I said, well, the difference is to the worse and to the better. The German education system is a very, I would say, a segregational system. A lot of parents have to decide, which I don't like, when their children are 10 years old, they have to decide which school they're going on. Mm-hmm. So they could go to a middle school, to a basic school, or what we call gymnasium, which is the high school, which prepares for university. So if you go to the high school, I think you are a lot above average and a lot above the average high school in the United States. But not everyone goes there. It's about, I would say, about 25% to 30% now go to the high school. The rest goes to different schools. So if you want to do a manufactural thing or technical job, you go to middle school and then you finish school and then you do training on the job, which means you continue going to some educational school for like 2 days a week, and you have training on the job for 3 days a week, and that goes on for about 2 years. So I think there is the people are very high skilled.
Right, and by the time you get to the job, you know the job.
You know the job, you know the skills, and can move on.
Right, and probably you already have a job, wouldn't you? If you are already
if you're good, if you're in that track, you will mainly get a job. Yes.
So that's a big difference, and that would be more like our technical schools, I think.
Yes, but it's more advanced than the technical school here.
Right, because they do have that training program.
They have the training program, at the same time they go to school, they learn, you know, better writing, better expression, math, right, science, history, so even English, you know, right, the basic English.
So y'all have weathered the storm over there. You're not really in with all this European stuff going on over there, are you?
Well, I know about it, and it's a huge problem. I must say it's a lot of countries have lived beyond their means, and they have piled huge debts, and that is a fact in the European Union, which is an entity of 27 countries. It is a difficulty if you have a common currency. You know, there are 17 out of those 27 that have a common currency called the euro. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a common financial policy, that means, you know, how do you structure your budget and how much debt are you allowed to take? If you don't have a common policy, then the currency can get into problem. That's what we're experiencing now. We have some countries that do very well, like Germany or Sweden, even partly Denmark or Netherlands, and others that don't do well at all for different reasons. One has to take into account that there are very different reasons why the people are in trouble. Ireland has a banking problem, mm-hmm, because they took too much or gave too much credits for housing. Spain had, like the United States, a housing bubble. They don't have a large deficit, but they have a huge unemployment problem now and a huge housing bubble. Italy has a more debt problem, and I think it had missed a lot of economic and welfare changes that needed to be done, and Greece is to some extent almost hopeless case because it has high debts and not very much manufactural ground or business ground, you know, to really compete in the 21st century.
Well, that truly has government at the core of everything, helping everyone, and the very fact that they're pulling back on what they're going to pay the people and take care of the people is probably at the core of a lot of this, isn't it?
It is. A lot of them, as I said, have lived beyond their means. Their welfare systems are much too big, and they have to draw back now and make very, very painful changes. And that's why you see a lot of demonstrators in the street. I feel sorry for those people because it's not their fault. But I think they have lived beyond their means for too much time, and now they have to pay the bill.
I was just talking with Phil this morning, and he said their credit rating had been downgraded to a C, which means there's not much hope that they will repay their bills, and yet they just got this deal worked out with the union over there. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting to see, and I won't make any prediction, but I don't know how long Greece at the end will belong to the euro. But you must take also into account that Greece is a very small country, and that its budget, its GDP, it's only 2% of the European Union GDP. So it's not a huge problem, but it's a problem for the currency and also for the politics, because you actually have never thought about this case to happen, and now it's there, and you don't really have the tools to work with it. So you're muddling through somehow.
Absolutely. Well, we are here with Martin Klingst. He is a reporter living in Washington, D.C., for a weekly paper over there in Germany. What's that paper called?
It's called Die Zeit, and it means the time.
The time. All right. Hey, we're going to be back in just a moment, don't you?
Martin Klingst. We are having an excellent time, excellent conversation, talking about what he views it from I guess we should say an outsider's perspective. Yeah?
Somehow.
Now, of course, you came here in 1971 and went to school here, correct?
Yes, the first time I came to the United States as a 16-year-old exchange student was in 1971. I lived with a very nice family in Arvada, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver.
And what was your perception versus what you saw when you came as an idealistic 16-year-old and what you see now?
Well, when I came as a 16-year-old, it was a very different time. It was my first transatlantic flight. Actually, it was my first flight at that time. I did not know that much about the United States. We just had a TV, and I read a lot of books, but did not really have a picture of the United States. It's totally different from today. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she became an exchange student 30 years later, and had been with us several times in the United States before she actually became an exchange student. For me, it was a totally new world. I was enthusiast. I thought everything is so modern. The school was brand new. I went to. They had very interesting classes. I had a film class. I took speech, and it was really, really very exciting. And I thought the cars, the roads, the airports, everything was, just state of the art.
Right.
So I think this edge has been lost. Coming here now, more than 40 years later, I think that the United States has lost its competitive edge in many things. If you look at the infrastructure, I think it's sometimes very, very sad to see. I think, driving through the United States, I've been on many, many road trips. I've driven 6,000 miles through the Midwest one summer, and I thought, wow, that is really a different state now. And I would say it's not modern anymore in many respects. You still have very, very good light towers in a lot of parts of the countries that do just the most modern things, but in the broad sense, that does not exist anymore. I think education has lost its competitive edge. If you look at an OECD report that compares school standards and skills that students have to learn in school, the United States has lost on many levels. So in reading skills, in writing skills, in mathematics and science, public schools are not doing that well anymore in comparison to a lot of other countries, especially from Asia, but also to some European countries. And when I came here in 71, social mobility was just there. People climbed up the ladder. And according to news reports, that does not exist anymore. People came to this country, flocked to this country because of the social mobility. They thought they came from very old-fashioned countries like Europe, where social mobility was just not there, you know.
Correct.
And when you were poor, you remained poor. When you had no education, it was hard to get an education. So the United States was the American dream. You know, you could make something out of your life if you had the skills and the power and the energy to do it. There was, you know, regardless what race, ethnicity, what religion, what background you had, as long as you did your job, you could really have a career. And this social mobility is over.
Fast forward 40 years. That's not really that long a time, is it really?
No, it's not.
And to see that now what you're telling me is that we don't have that. So do we have more class warfare? Is that what you think?
I think, I wouldn't call it class warfare, you know, I think that's a very big word, but I think that the social and the wealth gap, that is really a problem, because I think the backbone of every society is the middle class. The middle class has to thrive, it has to be strong, powerful, and if the middle class is losing, the society is losing. And the middle class is suffering, the society is suffering, and that is what is happening at the moment. I think it's not good for a country to live with a huge wealth gap, where 1%, you know, earn about 25% or 30% of the GDP, and the rest, you know, has to see how it gets around. And I think cannot be the future. I still think that I see a lot of resilience in this country. I see a lot of light towers. And the people are great, and they want to move on. So I am basically optimistic, but I think major changes still have to be done in many parts of the society and the economy.
Interesting. We are talking with Martin Klingst right here on WLMA and WCRS. I did find out he happened to travel with, Rick Santorum, and we're going to be talking about some of his political musings, I guess we should say, about the American politics system here. He has some very interesting views on that, so we're going to talk about some of that. And we're also going to talk about, now, do you live here? How long will you be living here in
I came in 2007,
yeah,
and I will stay till next year.
Till next year. Then they ship you back?
And then they will ship me back.
All
my family and the furniture.
All right. Well, gosh, I bet this has been a fascinating time, though, huh?
Oh yes, totally. I love it. It's one of the best times of my life, I think. And I've been traveling so much. I've been meeting wonderful people. It's an exciting time. The last 4 or 5 years have really been very interesting.
Well, it has to be amping up with the election coming up. That has to be a plum to be able to be over here as a political reporter here. That has to be a big plum for you.
Oh, yes, it is, yes. And it was already when I came in 2007 with the last campaign, and I think, you know, even though I think the last campaign I was even more interested in than in this campaign, but still it's
What made it more interesting?
Well, I think, you know, you had competitions on both sides of the aisle. You know, you had the Democrats competing, and you had the Republicans competing, and I think, you know, the first time that an African American was a viable candidate and a woman made it very interesting. You had a lot of stories to tell, and this time it's just focused on the Republican side, which is a narrower angle.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we are right here with Martin Klingst. He is a reporter for what's that called? Die Zeit, right here over there in Germany. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of these things. Gosh, he even has some comments in here about Herman Cain, Gingrich, Romney, Santorum. You name it, we'll be talking about it right here on WLMA and WCRS. So, Andy, let's cue up a little music. Let's hear South Carolina news, and we'll be back in just a second. That's right. Love and Show, and we're into politics now, folks. I tell you what, we have Martin Klingst here. He is a bureau political editor and head of the political department of a German newspaper, Die Zeit.
Die Zeit.
Die Zeit. Oh, darn it, I tried again.
Oh, we'll get into till the end of the show.
That's right, we have till 10. Okay. All right. And he, of course, has been, he's been here since the last political presidential election, and he'll be here through this one. And we were just talking about the candidates and what you see and what it is. You know, one of the things I wanted to ask you was we were talking about the super PACs and what's happening with all this negative publicity. What do you think as an outsider observer here?
I think that is super PACs are detriment to the political culture of the society. I think that the Citizen United decision by the Supreme Court did not probably anticipate what was really happening. They wanted, equal opportunity, equal chances for corporations and the unions in the term of the First Amendment, free speech. But now what we see is pouring millions of dollars in negative campaigns. The candidates themselves, with their own campaigns that are more limited, just say, okay, we have clean hands, we don't do this dirty business, but they depend on the same time of their super PACs. And there are millionaires and billionaires pouring large tons of money into the super PACs, and just for one reason, to destroy the other candidates. It's a very destructive business, and I think that's going to harm the political culture. A lot of people are already, for good reasons, appalled by the way politics are done. It's hard to get anything done in Congress because people are just very partisan and don't like compromises and don't sit down and just talk bad about one another.
But it used not to be that way.
It used not to be that way.
Exactly.
I think that has changed. I think that probably changed as far as I have followed history. Probably changed in the 90s, became worse and worse. I think politics here have always been a battle between good and evil. So that is a long history. It comes, way back to the roots of this country when the Puritans came in. It's a very fierce battle from the first moment on where this country should go.
Exactly.
And I think, but at the end of the day, people compromised. They sat down and said, for the good of the country, we have to come to a solution. And I think this feeling is obsolete. And this is sad when I look at what happens in Washington. That is really hard to find reasonable people sitting down at the table and saying, okay, let's work this through and let's come to a solution. And super PACs are just a detriment to a culture of compromises, of finding a common solution, because this attack business just destroys people. And if you let the thing out of the bottle, it's bad to get it back in again. It's probably impossible, and I think for the Republicans, I don't know how in the long run they will just, get along with one another if they just, destroy each other.
I know, there's been a lot of conversation about, of course, President Obama and Hillary Clinton were at each other's throat during that whole political battle, and now, of course, she is Secretary of State and he's President. So it does kind of make you wonder how people can bury the hatchet, shall we say, to be able to get along.
That is true. But there were some harsh moments between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, I recall that. But at the same time, it was not as harsh and destructive as the campaigns, for example, between Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich. When you look at what their super PACs, the ads of their super PACs, it's just all negative. And I don't remember that they were like that in the 2008 campaign. There were some harsh moments and some regrettable moments. But I think it was even more polite than today, if you recall the situation.
Sure. Now, of course, we were talking about Mitt Romney, and of course the primary election comes up, next Tuesday? What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be a crucial moment, a pivotal moment, a decisive moment for the campaign. Because if Mitt Romney loses his home state, Michigan, where he grew up, his father was a very well-known and very efficient and successful CEO and also a successful governor. So when he loses there, I think you will see a shift in the campaign. Then people will ask, is he really still the front runner? Can he win? Or do the doubts grow just that he is not the one that can win.
Well, from a prediction standpoint, though, sitting here today, is Romney going to be the candidate for the Republican Party?
If I had to bet, I would still say yes, because he still has this huge advantage of money and organization. And Rick Santorum, who's now his biggest opponent, still needs a lot of organization and a lot of money to compete against the Romney election business. So I think Romney still has the advantage on his side, but it's going to be tough. Once he loses Michigan, then to campaign against the rumor that he is a loser, it will be tough.
Is he true? Do you think he's truly a conservative?
Well, he tries to explain it to you, and I think he is. I just went to the CPAC event in Washington, the Conservative Political Action Committee, big conservative movement, and there he gave a speech on his conservatism. And I talked to a lot of people afterwards, and they were all quite doubtful. The thing is, I think he has moved more to the conservative side, but his record is just different, and it's difficult.
But you're saying his record is different, it's not conservative?
His record as governor was not that conservative. Well, he actually, even though he denies that, but Obamacare is a copy of the Romney care, and Obama carefully read what Massachusetts did under Romney. And now just saying I just wanted it for Massachusetts and not for the country, and I'm going to be the first one who repeals Obamacare, sounds a bit funny.
I agree.
And then, he was for, gay rights. He was for more environmental protection. He thought climate change is a severe threat. And now he moves away from all those positions. He was for pro-choice before he became a pro-life advocate. So he's changed so many times his position. And when he ran against Ted Kennedy as a senator in Massachusetts in the early 90s, which is sometimes forgotten, he said, "Not Kennedy, I'm the true progressive." So,
has he really changed? Do you think he really has changed?
Well, I think he has changed, but I like people who say, I have become wiser and I've changed my opinion. I think we all do,
sure.
And this is just human, and
it's called growth, right?
It's growth,
faith and age,
right? But you change your opinion on a few things, but I would say he's changed them almost on everything, and he will probably change them again if it becomes better to change them again, just because it might be advisable for his campaign. So I have a hard time finding the core of this man, finding what is his spine.
Absolutely. Now, as far as Rick Santorum, what do you think about Rick Santorum?
Well, he's very conservative. He's a social conservative.
Has he always been conservative?
To some extent, yes. In social affairs, yes. In moral questions, yes. In fiscal questions, not always. He's been, while he was a senator, he's been known for, taking a lot of money to his district. So he was not an opponent of the earmarks. But he really is a conservative, and I think what people like about him, and what you can see when you follow him in this campaign, he is actually a guy that is authentic. You have the feeling when he talks, he really means what he says. And it comes out of his inner side. And while Romney, when you look at Romney, you never know, is it really his true belief, or does he just say so? While when Rick Santorum speaks, I get the impression, okay, he really believes it. Even though I don't agree with some of his positions,
sure.
But still you think, okay, this guy is authentic.
All right. Well, we are here at Sharp Facets Gallery. We are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, and we come back. We're going to talk about Newt Gingrich, and then, of course, there's Ron Paul, too. So don't you? Gallery gold is at a great price, over $1,750 right now. So if you've got gold to sell, make sure you come see us today. Silver's over $34. Take advantage of the high price. Come see us today. But we just had a question. Darlene Masterson says, please explain this, who this is again. It's very interesting. Well, I am here with Martin Klingst. He is the bureau chief, Washington, D.C., for a big German newspaper called
Die Zeit.
Die Zeit.
Repeat it.
Oh,
We'll
yeah,
get it.
we'll get it. Yeah, we've got 10 minutes more. I ought to be able to get it then. But you do a lot of opinion and political commentary to the people back there in Germany. Now, this is a huge paper.
Yes. We have about 2 million readers. We have 500,000 subscribers. And it's one of the biggest papers. And it has a long tradition, was founded after World War II. And it is probably a pretty unique example. It's still doing very well, lots of revenues.
It's unusual for the newspaper business.
It is very unusual for the newspaper business, also in Europe, though Europeans tend to read still more printed papers. But still, our last 4 or 5 years have been excellent. And I recall difficult times in the 90s when everyone was saying, weekly papers, the time is over for them, because it's up to the daily papers to take over, because they had also weekend editions that had the same volume almost like a weekly paper, and they were more actual because they came out every day.
Sure.
And then comes the new economy bubble. And suddenly the daily papers got into trouble, and everyone was saying, the daily papers are over because they can't compete against the internet. And now it's the time for weekly papers, because if people have time over the weekend, they have some leisure time and want to read, and they want to read more in-depth stories, more background stories. So that's the time for the weekly paper. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Well, you're going to be here, through the first of next year, or?
I'm going to go back to Germany, to move back in late spring 2013.
You look forward to it?
Yes and no. I'm going to miss the United States. I love it here, and I've been so many times to the United States. I would come back, but no, I'm also looking forward to going back. First of all, my daughters are there now, and our families are there, and it is culturally, I must say, I'm still a European.
Culturally, you're still a European, I'll bet. Well, listen, we've talked about Mitt Romney, we've talked about Santorum. You actually, you followed Santorum in Iowa, here in South Carolina.
And in New Hampshire.
So you had some good background as far as that. Now, what do you think about Newt Gingrich? Is he finished?
I think so, yes. He's a great orator. We will see his debate tonight.
Right.
And I doubt that he's going to have a big comeback. I think that is also due to the super PACs. He has really been destroyed. And, there were reasons behind it, but it was also a very, very negative campaign. And he has no organizational background. He has not enough campaigning. And I think people see that he is not constant enough in his message. Some of the reasons that people just back away from him is also, the past of him being speaker. He's, if you say Romney changed his positions, Gingrich did that too. He could cover it better, but he was also not always, a true conservative or, stuck to his goals. It depended what time of the year it was.
Or who was in power, right?
Who was in power.
There you go, maybe better. So okay, you think Newt's finished. But, the surprising one to me is Ron Paul just seems to be out there having a blast.
Yes, he is, even though he has not won one single primary yet.
Right.
So if he does not win any primary until Super Tuesday, it's going to be difficult to continue to carry on. But still, it's a phenomenon. I think he is not electable for the large majority in the United States, but he has a very strong followership. You know, he's very, very enthusiastic people, especially young people. But the interesting thing is and I've done that a lot of times. I've done it in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in South Carolina. I've interviewed Ron Paul people that came to the campaign events, and I said, if there was no Ron Paul around, who would you vote for in the general election? And the younger people, a lot of them said Obama. And I said, oh, how come Obama? Oh, they said because, actually we like Obama, we like Ron Paul because of his anti-war attitude, that he wants to take back the troops, that he doesn't want to teach the world, and so on. And they were not actually so enthusiastic by his fiscal points of views, and that were more the elderly people. The younger were more all anti-war, anti-Patriot Act, civil liberties, anti-Guantanamo, and the elderly were more, okay, his fiscal conservatism. So I think he has united, you know, different factions, which is very interesting to see. But it's interesting, you know, when this camp falls apart, to whom his voters will go to.
Yeah, I think that will be. You know, do you think that he's just going to stay in to be able to have a say at the convention?
I think so. I think he's going to stay in. I don't know if he's going to till the very end, but he's going to stay in because he's collecting a lot of delegates, you know, and that gives him some power, and I think he's going to use that for himself, maybe for his son at a later stage, and maybe his son Rand Paul will run one day for president. It's a family history.
I asked Rand Paul, I had him on the show, I said, is your dad just setting this up for you? Is it the dynasty? And he goes, well, I don't know about that, and they haven't told me about it. And I said, yeah, right. That was very interesting. So we've talked about Rand Paul, Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich. We think that, according to what you're saying here, that Mitt Romney is still the candidate for. Now, speaking of that, how do you think then that's going to fare against President Obama with the money and the influence and the popularity?
Well, I think, you know, when the primaries are over, the race starts at start. Mm-hmm. So it's all new then. But still, I think Romney has a good chance, but he's also a major obstacle. And I don't know how that's going to play out in the end game. But Romney is the Mr. Fix-It. His whole attitude is the CEO attitude. You know, let me do the job. I get some people together. We sit down at a table, find a solution, get it done, and then I'm out of the White House again. So I think that is a hard program to run for, because people are also looking for a vision, and you don't see that vision. You know, what does he really want for this country, for the people? And he has now, in all his campaigns, you know, when he has his appearances, he cites America the Beautiful. But I must admit, when I look at him and how he does it, I think that's, you know, it's more theater. I don't see how it comes out of himself, you know. Does he really feel it? And so
from his gut,
you know. And I would say that if you just run as a CEO and Mr. Fix-It, and the economy is doing better, so what is there to fix, you know, if it's already going to be fixed?
What about President Obama's record, though, for the last 4 years? What do you think?
Well, there are things that he's done that probably helped the country. I would say that the auto bailout in Michigan worked. You know, the companies recovered. They're paying back their debts, even with interest. So actually the government is winning money out of the whole thing. The healthcare system is difficult. I always try to tell my European readers, you know, that's a different mindset here, because for Europeans, a mandatory system is just there, and they want it.
Right.
And they want it. You know, everyone wants it. But I think it's a different mindset here, so I have to explain the difference in thinking. Mm-hmm. I think in foreign policy, he has achieved some good things. I think that other countries view America as a lot more friendly than it used to be. There are a lot of things to be done. I think, you know, the question of energy, which we haven't touched so far, which I think is a major problem in this country. It's not only about digging or drilling and finding own energy resources, it's also about energy consumption and energy efficiency. And I think a lot has to be done to to insulate the houses, to have more fuel efficient cars. I think there's still so much waste of energy which has to be stopped, because the fuel price, the energy price, will not go down, and there is no way in the long future it will go up. Now it's about $4 to $5 a gallon. I think you will see it climbing up to $6, $7 one day. It's $8 or $9 in Europe at the moment, and I think you are on the way to that path.
This is WLMA right here in Greenwood, South Carolina, WLMA WCRS. We're going to continue here just for a second, since we just touched on this energy thing. I think we ought to spend just a couple minutes. Do you have a couple minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. We just had a call from Jim Jeffries. After spending 6 years in Germany, his paper always seemed like a combination of National Enquirer meets the New York Times. What do you have to say to that? We're talking about your paper, the
Die Zeit.
Die Zeit. Okay.
Well, it's 10 o'clock. You should have got it by now.
No, what do you think about that comment? A combination of National Enquirer meets the New York Times.
Yeah, he's totally right.
He's totally right?
Yeah, we have a lot of, I would say that our paper is the middle of the road. It is has huge debates, political debates. I was the paper's political editor for 9 years, so I led a lot of those debates with the editors and others in the paper, and there was always a lot of political disagreement, but it makes a paper very lively.
Absolutely. And so just to go back to this energy issue that we are dealing with here in our country, in Germany, the price of petrol fuel has always been so much more expensive, and it's in a liter versus a gallon too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's but the gallon price would be around $9 nowadays.
And what are the European countries doing about the price of energy?
Well, it's our price is different. The gasoline price is so high because it's taxed much higher, and a lot of the tax was used to actually invest in renewable energies and to slowly change the way of energy consumption. So Germany has now a much larger portion of renewable energy. It's a leading
In what kind of renewable?
Sun, and especially sun and wind. And Germany is a leader in sun and solar energy, even though we don't have that much sun. But we have developed a lot of those panels and a very sophisticated way of collecting energy, even though they're clouds.
Right.
And wind energy too. And we have a cap and trade system, and this change towards a more renewable energy was also financed partly by the taxes that were put on gasoline.
Well, you see big differences in the price of gas just across the United States. I mean, in South Carolina, we have less taxes than, say, Washington, D.C.
Right. And I think, you at the moment you could not go up to that price, because still what probably has to change also in the long run is the transport system. You depend very much on a car or 2 or 3 cars per family, but prices will go up. So there is no way of keeping them at this low level. And
So
probably
South Carolina has such a variety, though. We don't have public transportation here that much, simply
Right.
because of the way the state's laid out.
Yeah, but you have that all over you. Well, you have public transport system in the metropolitan areas, but I think you need it in different areas too. And I think in the long run there will be no other choice than also thinking more about commuting and having a more sophisticated public transport system.
Absolutely. Well, Martin Klingst, it has been absolutely a pleasure to start off the day with you here this morning.
Well, thank you for having me, and I would say Greenwood is a great city, and I've enjoyed my time here. I've had great talks with the mayor, with you, and I think it's going to get back on its feet. I'm very optimistic.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing your article then about what you have to say. Hey, I am Ann Eller. I am right here at Sharp Facets Gallery. That's going to do us for us. News is in progress. And then Laura Ingram, thanks so much for tuning in on WLMA, on WCRS. It'll be some music, folks, so don't you go away.